actors, you really represent the quintessential tough guy. So what is the key to playing a convincing badass?
Well, I think, honestly, I think that, and this happens in life a lot too, because this character, you can't lose this character. It's too hard to lose. And there's probably a lot of emotions I have. If someone violates me in life in general, that character comes out. And it comes out through the eyes. It just happens. And sometimes my kids don't like it and all that, but if someone, you know how many times you call American Express because you got a problem with the billing and all of a sudden you're...
So that's your inspiration?
No, but that's when he comes out.
All right.
So he comes out and you get sent to the Philippines and you can't understand what they're saying and blah, blah. That evolves. Then when someone does something or says something to you and doesn't keep their word, John Kreese comes up. It happens. It happens. And it mostly happens in my eyes. And I've only noticed it in the last 5 years. Prior to that, it was an acting job, and you really think about John Kreese and his values once, I guess, just before you get the job, because I had to do a lot of homework about why John Kreese was the way he was. Why did Mercy for the Weak work all the time for him? It's because he was always allowed, he was a winner, and he was not allowed to win when he went to Vietnam. And there were children who would come up laced with dynamite, and they'd all want chocolate or something from his soldiers, his platoon, and then they remotely blow up. And all those stories that we heard about Vietnam, as we hear in Afghanistan, existed for him, and he wasn't allowed to come back as a winner. And he swore that his students and he would never lose again. And so therefore, all of this evolved. Mercy's for the Weak, No Mercy. You know, my students will never lose anything. And Cobra Kai, all this came from me sitting down with Army Rangers and discussing the backstory of what they experienced and how we could sort of osmose it into what John Kreese experiences and why he is the way he is. You know.
Did you ever think your character and would ever reunite the last time they saw?
Well, Billy and I have been trying to write a screenplay where we could work together. And it was really, thank you, it was really difficult because we couldn't use the names. We were arrogant enough to think that people would know who we were just by if he was called Johnny and I was called John. And the stories were similar in the karate world. And we were writing stuff where my character become very rich and then have an army of Cobra Kai and train them. And it was really interesting. We never could get it together. We tried so hard. It was so difficult. So to answer your question, I only wanted to do this if I could really work with Billy on the show. And what they told me, I don't know if you've seen season 2, but you know, the character does come back as in episode 10, and he does share a life with Johnny Lawrence. There's two things that John Kreese cares about. One is Cobra Kai, the integrity of Cobra Kai, which is embedded in his soul as a loner, and Billy and Johnny Lawrence, because it was like his son. And Billy never had, Johnny Lawrence never had a father figure. I was his father figure. I embarrassed myself in Karate Kid 2. And as this show evolves in season 2, you learn much more about the character. There's a vulnerability there, but he's still the John Kreese we all remember to hate. You know, that you love to hate this guy, or you hate to love him, whichever it is. But it's very versatile because the writers are so astute with their writing, which is why I decided to come and play.
You are a pop culture icon for so many. Do you have a favorite pop culture icon yourself, like a favorite James Bond, a favorite Beatle, someone that you've looked up to and admired over the years?
There's a couple. I mean, I really enjoy Sergio Leone, and I'm a big Western fan. And I remember meeting him in Cannes, and it was a great little story. And I met him in Cannes, and we chatted, and We talked all about Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, one of my favorite westerns. And asked him, was it your idea the Serape? Was your idea the Cigarillo? What, you know? And he didn't speak English very well. He had his brother-in-law who was interpreting all the time. 6 months later, I find out that he's going to be at the Chateau Marmont over here, casting Once Upon a Time in America. And so I go there and I learn in flawless Italian. Do you remember me? We met in Cannes. I learned it perfectly. Going there, and he's there again with his brother-in-law, interpreting it, and I sit down with him and I say, you know, do you remember me? We met in Cannes in flawless Italian. And he goes, do I remember you? You're the actor that knows more about my movies than me. So from then on, Sergio Leone was like one of my icons because he was so creative. And when I saw my favorite movie that I loved in high school called The Last Days of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was about Lot and his wife and the biblical story. And then one day I'm watching this movie and I saw, and only in the last couple of years, Sergio Leone was the first AD on this Sword and Sandal movie from 1960 with Stuart Granger and Pierre Angeli. And it made me feel even more that I love this guy that I didn't get a chance to work with. And another guy is Steve McQueen. I loved Steve McQueen and Sean Connery because Steve McQueen, I was offered a part in Tom Horn. And I think if I ever had to say the biggest mistake in my career ever was that I turned it down because I got the part the day I visited my parents in New York, and I didn't have the heart to leave them and go back to the coast, and I missed a whole week's work with Steve McQueen, and he died shortly after. And I was Sean Connery's stand-in in the Anderson tapes. And I just, as an actor, I learned to listen. It was the greatest lesson I ever got from Sean Connery. I just watched Sean Connery listen. And he's working with, you know, Martin Balsam, he's working with all the, Sidney Lumet directed it. But I just watched him every day listening. And it was all just like a glorified extra job that I think it was 1971. And I remember being told, I went up to him and I said, you know, I'm accepted to work in repertory, or I was accepted to School of the Arts and go back to a fifth year of school. And I wasn't sure if I should go out and act professionally or go back to school. And he said to me, young man, if you can do Antigone, you can do anything. Which meant if I could do the classics, go out there and get a job and act. So go to this repertory, forget about school, it's over. And he was, you know, he was just terrific, and I never forgot him for saying that. And we met 10 years later and became tennis partners, and he was a guest. He was just so much fun to play tennis with James Bond, and on the other end he's screaming curse words when he missed ball. And I reveled in it. And I said, God, he talks just like I do. And I'm playing tennis with James Bond. And that was like 85, 86, 15 years after. He didn't remember me, but I always remembered him, you know. And those stories will stay with me forever, with those characters.
Great, thank you.
You know.
Last question.
The younger cast is really interesting because, as I said outside, we never socialized much in the movies. The Cobra Kai never really became friendly with me. I didn't become friendly with them, and there was always a stigma there, where John Kreese was always up there and they were here as students. It naturally happened. Like, they weren't told by John Avildsen, don't socialize with Martin Kove. We want to keep that mystique going. Well, that was really interesting, including how Johnny Lawrence reacted to John Kreese in the movies. The same phenomenon happens here. The students, primarily Hawk and Miguel, have this feeling, and I can't tell you a lot, but I start working in the dojo. And the respect that these actors have and the technique that they have is just like back in the movies. There is that they're happy to be there working with, I don't use myself as an icon, that's such an elusive word, but with these characters that in their world are iconic. Johnny and John Kreese, and even Ralph. There's that mutual respect that the actor has working with another actor that also lends itself into the character. They have that same feeling for the character of John Kreese. You know? So it's a pleasure working with them, and they're good. They're smart. Yeah, and they are really good fighters. I mean, these cats didn't come in with any knowledge of karate, and they can fight. And there's a lot of fighting in season 2. Good stuff.
Right, lovely meeting you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.